As midnight approached, the wind howled around the old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. Emre stood in front of it, holding a small flashlight in his hand. No one had lived there for years. The windows were boarded up. The walls were crumbling. The house stood like nothing more than a ghost, but what had brought Emre here was the villagers' tale of the well. The villagers whispered, "In that house, what waits is not water, but a voice." Emre didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was just superstition, maybe stories made up to scare children. But his curiosity outweighed everything else. When he pushed the door, the screech of the hinges scraped at his ears. Inside, the stench of dust burned his throat, and the wooden floor groaned beneath him. He swept the flashlight across the walls and saw faint carvings, circles, scratches, half-finished shapes. They looked human-made. In the kitchen, a broken plate and a rusted knife lay on the table. In the living room corner, a yellowed blanket still draped over a chair. But none of that mattered, because what drew his attention most was the door leading down to the basement. A cold draft seeped out from beneath it. And with that draft came a faint sound, like someone breathing underwater. Emre should have turned back, but he didn't. He walked toward the door, and the nightmare began. He pushed the door open. Darkness swallowed the staircase. The flashlight beam slid down a few steps before vanishing completely. Emre placed one foot on the stairs. The wood groaned. Dust lifted into the air. On the second step, a pebble cracked under his weight. On the third, he looked over his shoulder. The darkness behind him seemed to press closer. The basement was larger than he expected. The ceiling was low, the air thick and suffocating. On the walls, old tin cans and shattered jars clung to the shadows. But in the very center stood the well. It was built of stone, wrapped with thick iron chains. The chains were not there to protect the well. They were there to keep something inside. The rust had eaten into the stone, but the metal still looked strong. Emre pointed his flashlight into the well. The light slid down the stone walls and was swallowed whole by the darkness. Symbols were carved into the stone, circles, crooked lines, markings that resembled letters, but weren't quite right. And then the beam flickered. For a second, it nearly died. When the light returned, Emre froze. At the bottom of the well, far below, a face stared back at him. But it wasn't normal. The eyes were empty sockets. The mouth hung slightly open. And worst of all, the face was his own, a sightless, lifeless copy. He stumbled backward. A chain brushed his ankle. It was cold, too cold, and for a heartbeat it seemed to move. The upstairs door slammed shut. Emre was trapped. In the flickering beam, he noticed something lying by the well, an old leather-bound book. He knelt and picked it up. The cover was stiff with age, blotched with what looked like dried blood. On the first page was a single line: "Whoever reads these words owes a debt to the voice." His hand trembled. Every page after held the same sentence: "Join your breath with mine." Each line, written over and over, looked more rushed, more desperate. And then came the whisper. At first it was faint, impossible to make out. But slowly it took shape. Come down." He shone his flashlight back into the well. The face was gone. Instead, a cloud of cold breath rose from the depths, curling against the stones, carrying the whisper. The sound was his own voice. Chains rattled. The book slammed shut in his hands. The air turned colder still, as though the well itself was inhaling his life. He ran to the basement door. He pulled, pushed, slammed his shoulder against it. Nothing. It wouldn't budge. Something beyond held it shut. He turned back. The chains were moving, slowly, deliberately, sliding across the stone floor like serpents. The grinding of metal sounded like a groan. Emre stumbled backward. His foot caught on a stone, and he crashed to the ground. In an instant, one of the chains wrapped around his wrist. The icy burn went straight to the bone. He tried to rip it off, but the chain tightened like a living muscle. From the well came the sound of voices, not one but many. A child's whisper, a woman's broken murmur, a man's hollow groan, all tangled together. Down, come down. The book fell open again. This time the words were different. Do not resist. You already belong here. Emre's heartbeat thundered. The chain dragged him across the floor. His nails scraped the stone, breaking, bleeding. The well called to him. He screamed, but the sound went nowhere. The basement swallowed it whole. The chain dragged him to the edge of the well. The flashlight rolled away, its beam dying in the dust. The face rose again from the darkness, closer this time. Its eyeless sockets poured out cold air. Its lips parted. And as they did, Emre's own lips moved the same way. His breath matched the breath from the well. The book lay open, its final line waiting. The breath is won. The struggle is over. The chain yanked. Emre was pulled into the abyss. The last thing he felt was the cold emptiness wrapping around his body, pressing against his lungs, devouring his scream. The basement fell silent. The chains coiled neatly back around the well. The book snapped shut. And then, minutes later, the house door creaked open on its own. From the darkness inside, a breath rose. A breath exactly like Emre's. The whisper followed. The next reader will be you.